Ayesha lived on the edge of Punjab. Her world was painted in the warm colors of the earth. The golden wheat field stretched out like a sea of gold. The sky above was a brilliant, endless blue. She was a simple woman with simple dreams. Her heart was full of hope and kindness. She wanted a loving home, a family to care for, and a husband who would be her friend and partner for life. She believed in the goodness of people. She believed that love and hard work could create a happy life. Her dreams were not for riches or for fame. They were for the quiet joys of a family, woven together with threads of affection and respect. She found this dream, or so she thought, in Imran. He was a man from a nearby village. His family was well known and respected. When their marriage was arranged, Ayesha was happy. She entered her new home with a hopeful heart. She served her new family with a gentle spirit. She cooked meals that filled the house with delicious smells. She kept the home clean and welcoming. She treated her mother-in-law and father-in-law with the utmost respect. She tried her best to be the perfect daughter-in-law. She hoped her efforts would earn her a place in their hearts. She believed that her love and devotion would build a strong and happy family. Her life with Imran started with sweetness. He seemed kind and attentive. They would sometimes walk by the canal in the evenings. The water would flow gently, reflecting the colors of the setting sun. Ayesha felt her simple dreams were coming true. She imagined a future filled with the laughter of children. She pictured a home where love was the most important thing. She did not ask for much. She only wanted the security of a loving family, a place where she belonged, a place where she was valued not for what she could provide, but for who she was. Ayesha's spirit was as pure and clear as the water in the village well. But life, as it often does, had other plans. The simple path she had imagined for herself was about to become a difficult and winding road. The foundation of her happy home was not as strong as she believed. The love she thought was unconditional was tied to expectations she did not yet understand. Her gentle nature and her simple hopes were about to be tested. They would be tested in ways she could never have imagined. Her journey was just beginning. It would be a journey of pain, but also of incredible strength. A journey that would show the world the true meaning of a woman's spirit. The first joy in Ayesha's married life was the news of her pregnancy. The entire family celebrated. There were prayers and special sweets. Her mother-in-law seemed pleased. Imran was excited. Ayesha felt a new kind of happiness. She was going to be a mother. She lovingly prepared for the baby's arrival. She knitted small clothes and dreamed of the little one she would soon hold in her arms. She prayed for a healthy child. A son or a daughter, it did not matter to her. A child was a gift from God, and she would treasure this gift with all her heart. Her love was pure and unconditional. When her first child, Zainab, was born, Ayesha was overjoyed. The baby was beautiful and healthy. She had her mother's soft eyes. Ayesha held her daughter close and felt a love so powerful it took her breath away. But the joy in the house was short-lived. A silence fell over the family. Her mother-in-law's face was a mask of disappointment. Imran's excitement vanished. They had wanted a son, an heir to carry the family name. A daughter was seen as a burden, a temporary guest who would one day leave to join another family. The celebration ended abruptly. No more sweets were shared. Ayesha did not understand. How could they not love this beautiful little girl? She tried to show them Zainab's sweet smile. She pointed out how she gurgled happily, but their hearts were closed. The pressure for a son grew stronger. A year later, when Ayesha gave birth to her second daughter, Maryam, the disappointment turned into quiet anger. The atmosphere in the house became heavy and cold. Ayesha felt like she was walking on eggshells. Her husband, Imran, started to distance himself from her. He rarely held his daughters. He spoke to Ayesha in short, sharp sentences. Her simple dream of a loving home was beginning to crumble. The final blow came with the birth of her third daughter, Fatima. The news was met not with silence, but with open hostility. Her mother-in-law openly blamed Ayesha. She called her a woman who could only produce burdens. Imran, influenced by his family, joined in the criticism. He accused her of bringing shame upon the family. He forgot all the love and care she had given. He forgot the gentle woman he had married. Ayesha was now seen as a failure. She was the one who had broken the family's hopes. Her 3 beautiful daughters, her precious blossoms, were seen as nothing but unwanted weeds. The mistreatment started subtly. It began with cold looks and harsh words whispered just loud enough for Ayesha to hear. Her mother-in-law would find fault in everything she did. The food was not right. The house was not clean enough. Ayesha worked harder, trying to please them. She would wake up before sunrise and sleep long after everyone else. But her efforts were never enough. The real problem was not her work. The problem was her daughters. They were a constant reminder of the family's disappointment. They were the reason for the anger directed at Ayesha. The home that was once her dream was slowly turning into a prison. Imran, the man who had promised to be her partner, became a stranger. He no longer looked at her with affection. His eyes were cold and distant. He was a son before he was a husband. He listened to his mother's complaints. He absorbed his family's anger. He started to believe their words. He saw Ayesha not as his wife, but as the source of his family's dishonor. He stopped speaking to her for days. When he did speak, it was only to blame her. He would say she had failed him. She had failed his family. Ayesha's heart broke into a million pieces. The rejection from her husband was the deepest cut of all. The cruelty escalated. Ayesha was often denied proper food. She would give her share to her little girls, making sure they never went hungry. She would eat leftovers when no one was looking. Her beautiful clothes were taken away. She was given old, worn-out garments to wear. She was isolated within her own home. Relatives and neighbors were told false stories about her. She was made to feel like an outcast. Through it all, Ayesha held her 3 daughters close. She would hug them tightly, trying to shield them from the coldness of the house. They were her only source of warmth in a world that had turned so cold. The final brutal act came on a cold winter evening. After a heated argument, Imran, pushed by his mother, made a terrible decision. He told Ayesha to leave. He told her to take her daughters and get out of his house. She was no longer welcome. Ayesha pleaded with him. She asked him to think of their children. Where would they go? But his heart was made of stone. He pointed to the door and shouted at her to leave. The door of her home, the door to her dreams, was slammed shut in her face. Ayesha stood outside in the cold darkness, holding the hands of her 3 small daughters with nowhere to go. Ayesha stood on the dusty road, the village disappearing behind her. The night was dark and silent, except for the soft sobs of her youngest daughter, Fatima. Zainab and Mariam, though young, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. They clung to their mother's clothes, their small faces filled with fear and confusion. Ayesha had nothing but the clothes on her back and the 3 precious lives holding her hands. In that moment of utter despair, she could have crumbled. She could have given up. But when she looked down at her daughters' faces, she felt a new kind of strength rise within her. It was the strength of a mother. She found a small, one-room shelter in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of a nearby town. It was nothing like the spacious home she had left. The walls were cracked, and the roof leaked when it rained. But it was a roof over their heads. It was a place they could call their own. Ayesha cleaned it with her own hands. She made it a safe haven for her girls. She vowed that this small room would be filled with more love and warmth than the big, empty house they had been forced to leave. She made a silent promise to her daughters. She would work. She would struggle. But she would never let them feel unwanted again. Finding work was not easy for a single woman with 3 young children, but Ayesha was determined. She had always been skilled at embroidery. Her stitches were fine and delicate. She started taking on small sewing and embroidery jobs from local shops. She would work late into the night, her fingers sore and tired, long after her daughters were asleep. The light from a single dim bulb would fall on her work as she carefully stitched patterns onto fabric. Every stitch was a prayer. Every finished piece was a small victory. It was a step towards securing a future for her girls. The days were long and the work was hard. The money she earned was barely enough to feed 4 mouths. There were days when they ate only plain bread and drank water. There were times when Ayesha would skip her own meal to make sure her daughters had enough. Her neighbors, other poor families, would sometimes share a little food with her. She accepted their kindness with gratitude. Despite the hardship, Ayesha never complained. She faced each day with courage. Her only goal was to provide for her daughters. She wanted to give them a life of dignity, a life where they would be valued for who they were. In the face of immense suffering, it would have been easy for Ayesha to become bitter. It would have been understandable if she had filled her daughters' ears with stories of their father's cruelty and their grandparents' injustice. She had every reason to be angry. She had been betrayed and abandoned by the people who should have loved and protected her. But Ayesha chose a different path. She chose the path of dignity. She never spoke a single ill word about Imran or his family. When her daughters asked about their father, she would simply say that life had taken them on different journeys. She wanted to protect their innocent hearts from the poison of hatred. Her silence was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of incredible strength. It was a conscious choice. Ayesha understood that holding on to anger and resentment would only hurt her and her children. It would be like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She decided to focus her energy on building a positive and loving environment for her girls. She taught them about kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. She showed them, through her own example, that true strength lies not in revenge, but in rising above the pain. Her home, though small and poor, was filled with peace and love. Ayesha's patience was her greatest virtue. She knew that life's challenges were a test. She believed that if she remained steadfast and true to her values, things would eventually get better. She taught her daughters the value of patience. She would tell them stories of prophets and saints who endured great hardships with grace. She taught them that good things come to those who wait and work hard. She never lost her faith. Even on the darkest days, when she felt overwhelmed by her struggles, she would turn to prayer. Her faith was her anchor in the stormy sea of her life. It gave her the strength to carry on. She instilled in her daughters a deep sense of self-worth. She told them that being a girl was not a weakness, but a source of strength. She told them they were just as valuable and capable as any boy. She encouraged them to study hard and to dream big. She made them believe that they could achieve anything they set their minds to. She raised them not as burdens, but as future leaders. Her dignity and her silent strength became the foundation upon which her daughters would build their own successful lives. She was teaching them that real honor is not given by society, but earned through one's own character and actions. Inspired by their mother's tireless efforts and unwavering spirit, Ayesha's daughters grew up with a fire in their hearts. They had seen their mother work day and night, and they understood the sacrifices she had made for them. They were determined to make her proud. They knew that education was their only way out of poverty. It was honestly the key that would unlock a brighter future. They studied with a passion and dedication that amazed their teachers. While other children played, Zainab, Mariam, and Fatima would be huddled around a single lamp, sharing books and helping each other with their homework. They were not just sisters, they were a team. Zainab, the eldest, had a sharp mind and a passion for justice. She had seen how unfairly her mother had been treated, and she decided she wanted to become a lawyer. She wanted to be a voice for women who had no voice. She worked hard, won a scholarship, and got into the best law school in the city. Maryam, the middle child, was gentle and compassionate like her mother. She had seen how illness and poverty could destroy lives, and she dreamed of becoming a doctor. She wanted to heal the sick and serve the poor. She excelled in science and earned a place in a prestigious medical college. Fatima, the youngest, had her mother's creative spirit and her father's forgotten business sense. She was a natural leader. She watched her mother manage their small household with very little money and learned the value of every single rupee. She decided to study business. She wanted to create opportunities not just for herself, but for other women like her mother. She had a vision of a business that would be both successful and ethical. The three sisters, each on their own path, were united by a common goal: to honor their mother's sacrifice and to build a life of respect and dignity. Years passed, and the fruits of Ayesha's labor and her daughter's hard work began to show. Zainab became a well-respected human rights lawyer, known for her fierce defense of women's rights. Maryam became a skilled doctor, running a clinic that provided free healthcare to the poor. Fatima started a successful textile business, employing hundreds of women from underprivileged backgrounds, paying them fair wages and treating them with respect. The three sisters bought a beautiful, comfortable house for their mother. The daughters of the woman who was cast out for being a burden had become pillars of their community. They were known as the Daughters of a Lioness. News of the success of Ayesha's daughters traveled far and wide. It eventually reached the village where Imran and his family lived. The story was told with a mix of awe and disbelief. The three girls who were cast out as worthless burdens were now successful and respected women. They were lawyers, doctors, and business owners. Imran, now older, heard these stories. His life had not turned out as he had hoped. After Ayesha left, he had married again, desperate for a son. His second wife gave him 2 sons, but the house was not filled with happiness. It was filled with arguments and greed. His sons grew up to be selfish and disrespectful. They cared only about his money. Imran's parents had passed away. His business had suffered losses. He was now a lonely and regretful man. The respect he once commanded in the village was gone. He was known as the foolish man who had thrown away diamonds while searching for stones. He would often think about Ayesha. He remembered her gentle nature, her kindness, and her devotion. He remembered the 3 beautiful baby girls he had rejected. The weight of his guilt was a heavy burden to carry. He realized the terrible mistake he had made. He had traded love and loyalty for pride and prejudice. One day, driven by a deep sense of remorse, Imran decided to go and see them. He wanted to see for himself the success of the daughters he had abandoned. He journeyed to the city. He found the beautiful house where they lived. It was a world away from the small, one-room shelter he had thrown them into. He stood outside the gate for a long time, feeling small and ashamed. He was a shadow from a past they had overcome. He was the author of a pain that had fueled their success. He gathered what little courage he had left and asked the guard at the gate if he could see Ayesha. The news of his arrival was brought to Ayesha. Her daughters were with her. Zainab, the lawyer, was instantly protective. Her face hardened. Maryam, the doctor, looked concerned. Fatima, the businesswoman, was silent and watchful. They looked at their mother, waiting for her reaction. They were ready to send him away. They were ready to protect their mother from the man who had caused her so much pain. After all these years, the shadow of regret had returned to their doorstep. The past had come knocking, asking for an audience with the present. Ayesha was calm. The news of Imran's arrival did not cause a storm in her heart. The wounds he had inflicted had healed long ago, leaving behind scars that were reminders of her own strength, not his cruelty. She looked at her protective daughters and smiled gently. She told them she would see him. She would speak to him. This was not for his sake, but for her own. It was the final chapter of a book she needed to close. She asked to meet him alone in the garden as the sun was setting. The garden was her sanctuary, a place of peace she had cultivated with her own hands, much like her own life. Imran was led into the garden. He saw Ayesha sitting on a bench surrounded by fragrant flowers. She looked serene and graceful. The years had been kind to her. There was a light in her eyes that he had extinguished long ago, but she had found a way to reignite it on her own. He, on the other hand, looked broken. His shoulders were slumped, and his face was etched with the lines of regret. He stood before her, unable to speak, the shame too heavy on his tongue. He was no longer the proud, arrogant man who had thrown her out. He was a humbled, defeated old man. Finally, he found his voice. It was raspy and weak. He started to apologize. He spoke of his foolishness, his pride, and his deep regret. He told her about his unhappy life. He praised her for her strength and for raising their daughters so well. He asked for her forgiveness. He hoped that seeing his remorse would give her some satisfaction. He expected her to be angry. He expected her to shout at him, to list all his faults, to enjoy his humiliation. He was prepared for her revenge. It was, he felt, what he deserved after all these years of her suffering. But Ayesha did not offer him revenge. She offered him something far more powerful: peace. She listened to him patiently, without interruption. When he was finished, she looked at him with calm, clear eyes. She told him that she had forgiven him a long time ago, not for him, but for herself. She explained that holding on to anger would have destroyed her, and she had a life to build and daughters to raise. She did not need his apology now, but she accepted it. She told him she felt no bitterness, only a quiet sense of closure. Her response was not born of weakness, but of a profound and unshakable inner peace. There was no victory in revenge, only in dignity. Imran left Ayesha's home a changed man. He had come seeking a reaction, perhaps even a confrontation. He left with a quiet, profound lesson in grace. Ayesha's calm refusal to engage in bitterness or revenge was a more powerful statement than any angry words could have. It showed him the vast difference between his definition of honor, which was tied to pride and sons, and her definition, which was built on patience, dignity, and self-worth. He finally understood that he had not just abandoned 3 daughters. He had abandoned a woman of immense character. He had thrown away the real treasure of his life. Ayesha watched him go, then turned to her daughters who had been waiting for her. They embraced her, their eyes full of love and admiration. They understood the immense strength it took for their mother to face her past with such grace. In that moment, they were prouder of her than ever before. Her final act of closing this chapter had taught them more than any book could. It was a lesson in emotional maturity and the power of forgiveness. Ayesha had shown them that true victory is not about defeating your enemies, but about being at peace with yourself and your journey. The story of Ayesha and her daughters became a quiet legend in their community. It was a story about the injustices that women face, but also about their incredible resilience. It was a testament to a mother's love and the power of education. It showed that social prejudices, no matter how deeply rooted, could be overcome with determination and grace. Ayesha never sought recognition. She continued to live her life quietly, finding joy in her garden, her faith, and the company of her successful and loving daughters. Her life was her message, and her message was one of hope. Life, in its own mysterious way, always answers. The answers may not come when we want them. They may not come in the form we expect. For Ayesha, the answer did not come in the form of revenge or a dramatic apology that brought her satisfaction. It came in the form of 3 wonderful daughters. It came in the form of a life built with her own hands, filled with dignity and purpose. It came in the quiet peace she felt in her heart. Ayesha's journey teaches us that patience is not just waiting. It is the ability to keep a good attitude while working hard for what you believe in. And in the end, A life lived with honor and dignity is the most beautiful answer of all.